Welcome, everybody. We are waiting just a few seconds to let everybody in. Welcome to the launch of the 6th overview of housing exclusion in Europe. Bienvenue au lancement du 6e regard sur le mal-logement en Europe par la FEANTSA et la Fondation Abbé Pierre. I'm very happy to welcome you all today. I'm just saying a quick practicalities. You have interpretation at the bottom of your screen. Speakers today will speak both in English and in French. Vous avez l'interprétation en bas de votre écran. Les intervenants aujourd'hui interviendront à la fois en français et en anglais. If you have any questions, we will have a short time after the presentation. And if you want to ask questions, you have to use the Q&R tool that is at the bottom of your screen. And finally, we will, of course, send you the link of the report at the end of the meeting. So now I'm very happy to leave the floor to Kjell Larsson, who is FEANTSA president, to give you an introduction and welcome again. Thank you very much. Kjell, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you for that, Chloe. Well, as she said, hello everybody. I will start with that first. It's very nice to be here. And my name is Kjell Larsson, and I normally work for the Swedish Association of City Mission. And today I will share this very interesting webinar about the 6th overview of housing exclusion in Europe 2021. But before I let the next speaker on, I want to say a few words myself, as I am the president of FEANTSA. And there are so many things I would like to say about homelessness and housing first and all the action taking place and the need of collaboration and exchange of good practice between countries. But as a former colleague of mine in FEANTSA said, keep it short and get the work done. I have in decades worked with homelessness, and what I constantly need to repeat to every new group is homelessness is not a diagnosis. It's a situation that people are in. And to have a safe and secure living is the constitutional right in most member states. We now have a situation in Europe today with an increase in homelessness, especially amongst young people in almost every member state. And it continues to increase, and that requires urgent and immediate action. We are going to hear more about that later on in this webinar. Homelessness can be compared also to the pandemic we all are in right now. But for homelessness, housing would be the best vaccine. The side effects that we are experiencing from the pandemic, from increased depression, anxiety, isolation, alcohol consumption, domestic violence, and more, which we can see similar side effects also for people in homelessness, but 10 times worse. The difference is also that we now think that we can see an ending to the pandemic, but homelessness will unfortunately continue a while longer. So the fight against homelessness is an urgent priority, just like the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic has been. But there are a willingness to change the state of homelessness on an EU level also, as we can see in the Portuguese EU presidency program, which we will hear more about actually from the next speaker that we have here. And with those words, I will smoothly make some kind of transition here and give the floor to the Portuguese Minister of Labour, Solidarity and Social Security, Ana Mendes Godinho. And we have to pretend that we hear the applause from hundreds of people in the audience here. So I'll make a little applause here and welcome Anna. So please proceed.
So hello to all of you. Hello to all of you from Porto. First of all, let me thank you for this event, for inviting me for this challenge to be with you, FEANTSA and Fondation Pierre, in such an important moment, I would say, for Europe. You know that we are starting right now the Porto Social Summit, exactly because we decided to put the social dimension of Europe in the center of the stage of our European presidency in this semester. And that is why we are having this social summit, which is our biggest event during our presidency, exactly to assume the action plan of the European Pillar of Social Rights, assuming exactly that this is the time we have to react to this pandemic and to answer with concrete measures to the problems that we are facing, new problems, but old problems. So the pandemic arose new problems, but also it showed how vulnerable we are in some areas and make us act. So the Social Summit and the Porto Social Summit that will take place tomorrow and on Saturday exactly wants to guarantee that we are going from principles. And as you know, in Gothenburg, the European Pillar of Social Rights assumed in one of the principles exactly the need to tackle and answer with concrete measures the big challenge we have with the homelessness people. And what we want now is to go to action. We have the principle. I think everyone recognizes the principle. We must act. That's why we will have on the 21st of June a special event dedicated to homelessness people and how to tackle homelessness people at European level, sharing and learning from each other. We decided that homelessness people should be the main actors of this event, and they should be the ones who inspire us of what we needed to do. Of course, when we look at people who are in a situation of homelessness, they represent exactly the situations where us as society as a whole failed. This means that we weren't able to guarantee that these people had their life with equal access, equal opportunities, equal rights in terms of dignity and in terms of lodging. And this, I think, is why they should be, these people should be the main actors on the drivers of what we must act as policy makers, but also as policy actors. On the 21st, what we expect to do is to launch a European platform exactly to create concrete measures that can be shared by all of us, member states. You spoke about housing first, for example. That's a concrete example, but there are so many innovative ways of tackling and trying to answer with concrete, personalized answers that address the real problems of people, not only just hide them. That's not what we want. We want to be a society that does find answers to solve the real problems behind, and that guarantees that we are answering people with their own rights. When we are trying to answer this big challenge that made some of these people go to the streets. And we have to think that this can happen to any of us. It's not a problem of the others. It's our problem. It's our society problem that can happen to any of us. When we are doing and trying to create new answers to answer in an integrated and a whole approach way, we are doing nothing more than recognizing and giving back the rights that people do have that were not respected. So I think this will be quite an extraordinary moment on the 21st of June to guarantee that we are all together, assuming that this is our problem. It's not others' problem. It's our problem and our responsibility to find answers, concrete answers, deep answers that give back dignity that people deserve by their own right. It's nothing more than our duty and our responsibility, because we failed. Every homelessness people is someone we failed in as a society. So I think this gives us the responsibility, the energy, and mainly the inspiration we need. And this inspiration must be given by homelessness people who are in this concrete situation. That's why we also decided to give them the stage on the 21st, exactly to hear exactly from people who are passing through these situations, what can we do to give concrete answers to concrete needs, concrete measures to real people. That's what Europe needs. And I think this is why this Porto Social Summit is so important, because we are telling European citizens that there is a feasible hope, a concrete hope with concrete means and instruments to answer real people. And I think all your inspiration and your thoughts can change the world. Let's do it. We are here for that. Thank you. Again, I'm sorry for my crazy life, but I just have to go and run because I'm rushing for the summit. But hoping that your creative thoughts will inspire us all. Just to let you know that in Portugal, we developed a specific strategy. We have a commissioner just dedicated, who is Henrique Joaquim, I have to say here, and to say the name of Henrique. Henrique is fantastic, whose 24 hours a day are dedicated to invent, to think what's going on, if it's not working, what we should do to have an overall approach for this situation that has a society we cannot accept. Just to give you an example, for example, we identified, for example, homelessness people as a priority group for vaccination. So guarantee that these people that traditional do not have a voice, that they have the capacity of being heard, and that our lives in common are seen as a society that is responsible for answering every person that is member of our society. So please inspire us. I count on you, on your work, on your energy, on your good vibe, on changing our lives. And see you in Lisbon soon for this very, very, I think, also crucial moment to put homeless people on the stage as main actors, to guarantee that they are on the center of our decisions and of our main priorities. So good work, good inspiration, and let's meet in Lisbon.
Thank you very much, Anna, for these words. It's like sweet music in my ears. I think I can speak for everyone around here, and it's very good to hear that you talk about concrete actions and housing-led strategies that will conquer the homelessness once and for all, maybe. So, and hope to see you also in Portugal, Anna, because I gonna go there if I have to take my car. If I'm not able to fly, I will take my own car and drive there from Gothenburg here in Sweden.
We are waiting for you.
Good to hear.
If you need, I'll go pick you.
Perfect. Thank you. So, bye. Thank you very much. And as I am the chair here, I'm also a time guard, so I will make sure that we keep the time. So I think we are right on time now, because now we are want to hear some highlights from the report by Chloe Sermon-Morin and Sarah Kupchu, and which are coordinators of the report that FEANTSA and the Fondation Abbé Pierre have done here. So please proceed, Chloe and Sarah.
Thank you very much, Shell. Thank you, Minister Ana Godinho. It was a very inspiring opening speech, and I'm very, very happy to be with you today. I'm Chloé Sermon-Morin. I'm one of the two co-coordinators of the Housing Exclusion Report. I'm happy to have Sarah Kupchu with me from Fondation Abbé Pierre. So we will do this presentation in two voices. I will speak in English and Sarah will speak in French. So don't hesitate again to click on the interpretation button if you need it. First of all, the lack of coherent European monitoring on housing exclusion and homelessness, a task that should be the responsibility of the European institutions, has led us to produce this report every year for 6 years now. Today, we are living in a time of change. The pandemic has revealed and reinforced the profound inequalities that are eroding our societies. The pandemic has hit the poorest households hardest, particularly those in insecure employment and young people who are struggling to find their place in Europe's exclusionary housing markets. For people who are deprived of a decent, adequate, and affordable home of their own, the pandemic has had particularly drastic consequences. And in this new edition, we try to analyze available data on housing exclusion and homelessness to better understand the interactions between housing markets dynamics, poverty, age inequalities, and effects, consequences of the pandemic. According to an Ipsos survey released yesterday, almost 80% of Europeans agree that governments should guarantee that everyone has the right to decent and affordable housing. And the objective of this report is to help define the key role of policymakers in member states, but also EU institutions, in turning this fundamental right to adequate and affordable housing into a reality, especially in this crucial time. So first of all, let's look at the European data on housing exclusion and housing markets. All the data I will present in this chapter are extracted from Eurostat, the European statistics on income and living conditions. And those are latest data available. They are reflecting the reality of 2019, so before the pandemic. First of all, this is not a scoop. Rents and house prices have been steadily increasing for 10 years in the European Union, as you can see here on the graph. Between 2009 and 2019, house prices indices increased by 23%, in the European Union, and rental price indices increased by 16%. Here you can see the countries with the highest rent increases. These are Estonia, Lithuania, and Ireland. But prices don't make any proper sense if we don't connect them to income and resources, of course. And in the European Union in 2019, poor households spent an average of 416 euro per month on housing, an increase of 14% since 2010. Which, like, the comparison with non-poor households is quite striking. You can see that the difference between the average amount spent on housing between non-poor households and poor households is quite small. And even in some European countries, in Luxembourg, in Belgium, or in France, poor households even spend a higher amount on average on housing compared to non-poor households. So this is very, very telling about the inequalities we are facing today, and especially people who have not sufficient resources to pay for housing. You can also see on the graph here that private market tenants are on the front line of this disconnection between prices and income. And you can see that in the European Union, more than 10% of poor households more than 10% of private market tenants are extremely overburdened by housing costs, meaning that they spend more than 60% of their income on housing. Moreover, for the last 10 years, public spending in construction and in housing development has been reduced by half in the European Union. So we are basically living a housing crisis that is also reinforced by the fact that we have a shrinkage of the affordable housing stock. Then, as every year in the report, we also look at mortgage and rent arrears. So 3% of all households in the European Union are facing mortgage and rent arrears, and 8% of poor households are concerned. You can see here the countries where this indicator is the most alarming. These countries are France, Greece, Ireland, Finland, and Denmark. And the numbers that you can see here, for instance, 16% of poor households in France are in rent or mortgage arrears. Adding to that, the fact that financial vulnerability also increased with the pandemic and the COVID crisis. Here you can see data extracted from a survey made by Eurofound recently. And in this survey, 54% of Europeans stated that they were experiencing financial vulnerability. That means that they were unable to maintain their standard of living for more than 3 months without an income. We then, as every year, also look at unfit housing indicators and poor living conditions. So you can see here that overcrowding is concerning 30% of poor households in Europe and 17% of the total European population. You can also see here an indicator on energy poverty. 18% of poor households in Europe are unable to keep their home adequately warm. And what is quite alarming is the fact that those unfit housing indicators are reinforced by the pandemic and the consequences of COVID-19. First of all, we have the fact that like overcrowding is a factor for contamination of COVID-19. So basically people living in overcrowded homes have higher rates of contamination. You also have the fact that unfit housing has a strong impact on people's health in general. mental and physical health. And you have this study from the National Housing Federation, for instance, in the UK, showing the impact of lack of space on mental and physical health. And you have also the fact that successive lockdowns in the past year have increased energy consumption in lots of European countries. And we saw also an increase in utility bills arrears. We also have quite a lot of emergency measures that have been taken by member states in that regards. But what will happen when those measures will stop? That's a question, and an alarming question, basically. When we look at disparities in data according to age, we rapidly understand that being young and poor in Europe makes people more vulnerable to experiencing housing difficulties. Young poor people are much more confronted to housing exclusion indicators than the rest of the population. And that's where I'm going to let the floor to Sarah, who will present you the main and focus chapter of this year. We wanted to understand here the impact of the worsening housing exclusion on young people and on their transition to independence. So I'm now leaving the floor to Sarah. She will speak in French, so we'll just leave 3 seconds for interpretation. Thank you very much. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Merci Chloé, merci à tous pour votre présence aujourd'hui. Effectivement, donc nous avons choisi cette année de faire la lumière sur la situation de la jeunesse en Europe et notamment leurs conditions de logement. Compte tenu du fait que effectivement les jeunes apparaissent comme étant les premières victimes de la crise qui nous touche aujourd'hui. Donc, pour remettre un petit peu le contexte sur la jeunesse en Europe, les données Eurostat, donc, qui datent de 2019, nous disent que les jeunes représentent 17% de la population européenne et que parmi ces 17%, un tiers d'entre eux sont touchés par une situation de pauvreté. Alors pourquoi? Principalement parce qu'ils ont été déjà victimes d'une crise, celle de 2008, et une enquête réalisée par le Parlement européen relève que finalement, avant cette crise de 2008, les inégalités entre les générations étaient finalement peu marquées. Généralement, les jeunes étaient aussi pauvres que les plus de 64 ans, par exemple, mais qu'aujourd'hui, l'écart s'est creusé, d'abord avec une hausse du chômage, parce qu'ils ont perdu leur emploi suite à cette crise, mais aussi avec évidemment la crise aujourd'hui, la crise sanitaire qui vient aggraver donc ce creusement, notamment parce que de nouveau les jeunes sont confrontés au chômage, mais aussi parce qu'une partie d'entre eux, et nous le verrons, décrochent de leur formation, de leurs études. Et nous allons le voir, et d'ailleurs l'agence de notation Moody's l'avait relevé, les jeunes sont touchés effectivement sur le domaine de l'emploi, mais aussi sur le domaine du logement. Et la situation du logement était d'ailleurs déjà préoccupante avant la crise, comme on va le voir. D'abord, quelle est la première difficulté rencontrée par les jeunes sur le plan du logement? Premièrement, ils ont des difficultés à quitter le domicile familial. Donc, au niveau européen, ce sont 80% des jeunes qui vivent encore chez leurs parents entre 18 et 24 ans. C'est une part importante et c'est une part qui est en augmentation. Alors, entre les pays, il y a des disparités. On peut regarder par exemple le Danemark, qui est le pays qui a le moins de jeunes encore au domicile familial. C'est un pays dans lequel, pendant longtemps, il y a eu beaucoup d'aides à destination des jeunes. Et l'Italie qui rencontre un marché du logement vraiment bouché puisqu'il n'y a pas de parc locatif et que l'accès à la propriété est très entravé compte tenu des prix. Donc en Italie, 95% des jeunes restent chez leurs parents. On peut aussi donner l'exemple du Royaume-Uni où 2/3 des jeunes soit n'ont jamais quitté le logement parental, soit même y sont revenus. Et d'ailleurs, alors qu'on a longtemps parlé de génération Tanguy, ces jeunes qui avaient du mal à quitter le domicile parental, on parle aujourd'hui de génération boomerang, c'est-à-dire ceux qui reviennent chez les parents faute de pouvoir assumer leur propre logement. Alors pourquoi je l'ai dit? D'abord parce qu'il y a des difficultés d'accès au parc privé. D'abord, une impossibilité d'accéder à la propriété. Chloé l'a bien dit, il y a une augmentation énorme des coûts du logement depuis plusieurs années. Donc les jeunes n'accèdent plus à la propriété en bas âge. Prenons l'exemple de l'Irlande, il n'y a que 2% des propriétaires qui ont moins de 30 ans. Et du coup, on parle maintenant d'une generation rent, c'est-à-dire d'une génération de locataires qui, faute de pouvoir accéder à la propriété, se rabattent sur la location. Sauf que le marché privé de la location est lui aussi inaccessible pour les jeunes. Pourquoi? D'abord parce qu'ils sont attirés par des marchés qui sont extrêmement tendus, c'est-à-dire les pôles d'activité, les grandes et moyennes villes où ils vont trouver l'emploi, où ils vont trouver la formation, où ils vont trouver l'entreprise qui va leur permettre de suivre un apprentissage. Donc, ils sont attirés par des marchés qui sont déjà tendus. Et en plus, ils sont sur un marché des petits logements qui sont très prisés. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on a une population qui est plutôt vieillissante en Europe, donc avec aussi des ménages d'une personne qui sont de plus en plus nombreux, mais aussi parce qu'ils sont concurrencés par les touristes, par exemple, dans les grandes capitales, avec l'activité croissante des plateformes touristiques. Résultat, on a évidemment des augmentations de loyers, on l'a vu, 16% depuis plusieurs années, et avec des capitales où finalement le salaire moyen d'un jeune ne lui permet pas de payer le prix moyen d'un studio. Alors, je vous ai mis quelques exemples. Vous avez évidemment les villes comme Paris ou Londres, où on sait que le prix des loyers est énorme, mais également dans des villes peut-être de taille moins importante comme Lisbonne ou Amsterdam, où là, vous avez, vous le voyez, des loyers, des salaires moyens de 900 € à Lisbonne avec un loyer moyen à 1 000 € pour un studio, ou à Amsterdam, un salaire moyen de 1 675 € pour un loyer à 1 605 €. Donc, que reste-t-il pour les jeunes si ce n'est pas le parc privé? Peut-être est-ce le parc public et social, sauf que là aussi, des difficultés d'accès, puisque d'abord, le parc social n'est pas présent partout en Europe. Seuls certains pays ont un parc conséquent. Certains d'entre eux ont même privatisé leur parc public. C'est le cas, par exemple, de l'Allemagne il y a quelques années ou le Royaume-Uni. Et là où le parc public est présent, la demande est extrêmement forte, puisqu'on l'a vu, un ensemble de ménages sont demandeurs. En France, par exemple, ce sont plus de 2 millions de ménages qui sont demandeurs de logement social. Résultat, les jeunes ne sont plus prioritaires à l'accès au logement social. En Irlande ou en Suède, on a vite fait de considérer comme les jeunes ne sont pas considérés comme prioritaires, pardon. On a vite fait de considérer que la famille peut prendre le relais et que donc il n'est pas urgent de les reloger. Le parc étudiant reste aussi difficile d'accès puisqu'il n'échappe pas à l'augmentation des loyers. À Munich, par exemple, le prix d'une chambre de bonne a augmenté de 43%, d'une chambre d'étudiant, pardon, a augmenté de 43% en 5 ans, passant de 450 € à 600 €, ce qui est très important. Donc, quel est le résultat? Le résultat, c'est des jeunes qui se rabattent, faute de solutions, sur d'abord un parc de logements, et on l'a vu, dégradé. Donc, on arrive à des situations très difficiles, notamment pour les jeunes qui sont en situation de pauvreté. Lorsqu'on est jeune et qu'on est pauvre, on a 3 fois plus de risques que la population totale de vivre dans un logement indécent. On a aussi 3 fois plus de risques de vivre dans un logement trop cher par rapport à ses revenus que la population totale, et aussi dans un logement surpeuplé. Par ailleurs, on est également victime souvent de précarité énergétique. Chloé l'a dit, la crise a augmenté en plus les coûts puisque les personnes restent dans le logement, elles ont une consommation plus importante. Résultat, en France, en 2020, 66% des jeunes déclarent avoir dû baisser leur consommation de chauffage. Et L'autre conséquence qui est l'extrême drame pour les jeunes, c'est une augmentation du sans-abrisme parmi les jeunes partout en Europe. Alors, quelques exemples. En Autriche, par exemple, ce sont 44% des personnes sans domicile qui sont des jeunes. Au Danemark, c'est 30%. Et même la Finlande, qui est pourtant considérée comme le bon élève européen pour ses politiques de lutte contre le sans-abrisme, on trouve 15% des jeunes célibataires qui sont des personnes célibataires qui ont moins de 30 ans. Donc, on l'a vu, les conséquences sont dramatiques pour les jeunes en Europe et ils subissent cette crise de logement de plein fouet depuis plusieurs années. Et en face, le problème, c'est qu'il n'y a pas de filet de sécurité d'un point de vue financier. Donc, le chômage est en hausse. Sur l'ensemble de l'Europe, c'est 18% de jeunes qui sont au chômage, c'est 3 points de plus qu'avant la crise sanitaire. Et on a des pays qui atteignent des niveaux très importants. En Espagne, par exemple, c'est plus de 40% des moins de 25 ans qui sont sans emploi. En France, c'est 20%. Et lorsqu'on regarde même dans les quartiers populaires, c'est même plutôt 40%. Alors, pourquoi? Parce que, selon même les dires de la Commission européenne, les jeunes ont particulièrement des emplois précaires, des emplois sur des courtes durées, de l'intérim et travaillent dans des secteurs qui ont été particulièrement touchés par la crise, par exemple le tourisme ou l'hôtellerie. Résultat, donc une hausse du sans-abrisme avec finalement des filets de sécurité qui n'ont pas toujours été suffisants. On sait par exemple qu'ils n'ont pas toujours accès de façon systématique au chômage partiel parce qu'ils n'ont pas assez cotisé pour X raisons. Une grande part d'entre eux, dans beaucoup de pays européens, n'ont pas de minima sociaux, c'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas d'allocation pour venir créer un revenu minimum qui leur permette de survivre. C'est le cas par exemple en France où le RSA n'est pas accessible aux moins de 25 ans. C'est le cas aussi aux Pays-Bas où il n'y a pas d'allocation pour les moins de 21 ans. Par ailleurs, les aides au logement sont également insuffisantes puisque compte tenu de l'augmentation des prix, elles sont souvent, elles peinent à solvabiliser les jeunes en difficulté. Et d'ailleurs, dans certains pays, les budgets alloués aux allocations de logement ont même diminué, comme ça a été le cas ces dernières années en France ou au Royaume-Uni. Lorsqu'il y a des dispositifs, ils sont généralement temporaires. On pense par exemple au dispositif des jeunes qui sortent de l'aide sociale à l'enfance, qui s'arrêtent parfois de façon très brutale à la majorité ou à 21 ans. C'est le cas également de la garantie jeune, par exemple en France, qui s'arrête au bout de 18 mois et qui laisse des jeunes finalement, lorsqu'ils n'ont pas réussi à s'intégrer dans une formation ou dans un emploi, les laisse sans solution. Donc, il y a un effet conjugué entre les conditions de logement et la crise qui donne des résultats réellement dramatiques. Les aides qui ont été mises en place durant la crise, comme par exemple en France où on a pu avoir des aides au logement temporaire pour les jeunes, ou en Suède où l'aide aux étudiants a été déplafonnée, ce sont des aides qui sont temporaires et on ne sait pas comment finalement, d'un point de vue structurel, les jeunes vont pouvoir être soutenus après la levée de ces aides. Donc, quelles sont les conséquences? Les conséquences, on l'a vu, c'est des conséquences sur l'avenir, l'anxiété sur l'avenir. Un jeune sur 5 déclare qu'il aura des difficultés pour maintenir son logement avec sa perte d'emploi ou avec la crise, et le sentiment d'être complètement exclu socialement, d'après l'enquête Eurofound dont nous a parlé déjà Chloé. La slide suivante, s'il te plaît, Chloé. Donc voilà, un engrenage qui se met en place avec des conséquences sur la santé. L'OMS l'avait prévenu, le surpeuplement, c'est aussi des conséquences sur la transmission du virus. On a aussi des problèmes respiratoires lorsque les logements ne sont pas suffisamment aérés avec de la moisissure ou des problèmes de fuite d'eau. Des conséquences sur l'insertion. Les jeunes décrochent de leur formation. Une étude de l'Université de Bordeaux a montré que 66% des jeunes n'avaient pas pu maintenir leur travail habituel au sein de l'université. une augmentation de la pauvreté. En France, on a vu énormément de jeunes, des files d'attente énormes, hyper longues, avec plein de jeunes qui venaient chercher à manger, donc des jeunes qui avaient faim. Et d'ailleurs, à travers l'Europe, Médecins sans frontières, par exemple, a été obligé d'ouvrir des programmes alimentaires en Allemagne ou au Royaume-Uni, ce qui n'avait jamais été le cas auparavant. En Espagne, de la même manière, lors du premier confinement, ce sont 40% de personnes en plus qui se sont présentées en un mois. Et enfin, des conséquences sur la santé mentale avec une augmentation possible des addictions et du stress et finalement un manque de capacité à rebondir après la crise. Donc, on le voit, le risque réel, c'est que toutes ces difficultés rencontrées tant sur le plan économique que sur le plan du logement et donc du bien-être et de la vie au quotidien aient des conséquences à long terme et fassent basculer toute une génération dans une pauvreté, une précarité de long terme. Alors, quelles sont les solutions? Les solutions, c'est de développer du logement adapté, étudiant, bien sûr, mais pas seulement. Du logement aussi où les jeunes peuvent avoir un accompagnement. C'est le cas, par exemple, en Finlande, où il existe des systèmes de logement pérennes, c'est-à-dire que les personnes peuvent y rester de façon durable et peuvent bénéficier d'un accompagnement. Ça peut être aussi du logement partagé de façon intergénérationnelle, comme en Suède, ou avec de jeunes exilés, comme aux Pays-Bas. Évidemment, développer l'accès, faciliter l'accès au logement social. Alors et là, les villes ont un rôle important à jouer. Par exemple, à Paris ou à Bologne, de véritables programmes innovants sont développés pour pouvoir permettre à des jeunes d'habiter en centre-ville pour des loyers véritablement abordables. Et puis, bien sûr, assurer un minimum de ressources. On sait qu'en Irlande ou en Allemagne, où il y a des aides, par exemple en Irlande sur les sortants d'institutions, ou en Allemagne où les aides sont accessibles à partir de 16 ans, les inégalités, il y a des différences quand même moins importantes entre les différentes générations. Voilà, nos recommandations pour les États membres et pour l'Union européenne sur ce sujet, c'est évidemment d'inclure la question du logement dans toutes les politiques d'inclusion de l'Union européenne. On sait que la jeunesse, la garantie jeunesse a été revalorisée au niveau de l'Union et il s'agit pour nous de rappeler que le logement est un critère essentiel et nécessaire à l'insertion des jeunes. Donc, elle devrait pouvoir permettre aux jeunes d'accéder et de se maintenir dans le logement. Prévoir des revenus minimums, ce qui veut dire ouvrir les minima sociaux aux plus jeunes lorsqu'ils sont dans le besoin, mais aussi, parce que c'est nécessaire, réguler les marchés du logement, pouvoir encadrer les loyers lorsque c'est nécessaire dans les grandes capitales, là où les loyers flambent, prévenir les expulsions locatives en sécurisant les occupations, en permettant d'avoir des garanties universelles des loyers et en valorisant les aides au logement. Et enfin, intégrer bien sûr la question du logement abordable pour tous dans les politiques européennes, notamment le New European Bauhaus et la Renovation Wave. Voilà, je vous remercie de votre attention.
I'm going to switch to English again to do the final chapter of the report, which is on the state of homelessness in Europe. I take the opportunity to, I imagine that we have quite a lot of people who are working on the field, social workers, etc. And I would like to thank everybody who helped us with the reports. We did quite a lot of interviews, questionnaires, testimonies, and I really would like to thank all the people who helped us collecting all this information from all over Europe. So yeah, about homelessness in Europe, we have been documenting for a few years now with this report the fact that we don't have any common and complete gathering of data at European level on homelessness. We don't have common definitions, we don't have common methodologies. So this is our exercise here every year to try to gather data from different member states, different local authorities. So these are surveys from one-night surveys or surveys on 1 year, service providers numbers, so very diverse sources and methodologies. But for the first time, we also have been across a study made by Eurostat last year with an ad hoc module on housing difficulties and past experience of homelessness. And according to this Eurostat module, which was optional, so it doesn't cover all European countries, according to this survey, 4% of Europeans say that they have been homeless at least once in their lifetime. Amongst them, 1 out of 4 lived on the street in emergency or temporary accommodation, or in a place not suitable for housing. And 3 out of 4 of them were forced to live with relatives at some point. The main reasons evoked for those housing difficulties are first, family and or relationship problems, unemployment, insufficient resources or financial problems, and the end of a rental contract or uninhabitable housing. When we look at the trends that we gather as FEANTSA and Fondation Pierre, we tried to look a bit closer to different forms of homelessness, of course, and the rise in street homelessness, for instance, in different situations. And we also look at the diversification of profiles. And we see that profiles are continuing to diversify in a lot of European countries. In children, homelessness is increasing in quite a lot of European countries. Women homelessness, young people and old people are more and more represented amongst homeless people. We also look at the data about emergency spending and emergency measures that are constantly increasing. And that is basically reflecting the way we are dealing with homelessness in all over Europe. For instance, we have numbers from Dublin in Ireland, where the budget allocated to emergency accommodation services almost tripled between 2014 and 2018. And we also see in a lot of European countries, for instance, the increase in budget allocated to hotel rooms and emergency accommodation services. We have here, you can see here on the graph, on the infograph, sorry, that being homeless in EU capitals, yeah, you can see here numbers from Brussels, Barcelona, Paris, Dublin, from different partners who are doing those surveys on the ground every year or every 2 years, depending on the methodology. And what is quite striking here is to understand that in cities such as Barcelona, Paris, Brussels, where you have more than 1 million inhabitants, how can it be possible not to find solutions for just 5,000 people? This is just, we know that those people are in very, very complicated living situations. And this is always quite interesting also to see that those numbers compared to the general population are not an impossible target or an impossible dream to help them and support them in adequate manners. And of course, long-term policies do make a difference here. We've made reports before on good practices in Europe, and I invite you to read the previous reports we made on lessons learned from policies in Finland or in other local contexts, and we mention it in the report too. Finally, we have very worrying perspectives in the wake of the pandemic and ballooning poverty levels in Europe. We don't have much data on the effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic on homelessness, because we are a bit too early in the process to understand really how all the past year impacted on homelessness, forms of homelessness, different forms of homelessness. And we also know that a lot of emergency measures have been put in place in lots of European countries. But we want to raise the alarm about the fact that we are witnessing a steep rise in the number of people experiencing extreme poverty. As Sarah said earlier, we saw queues of people in front of food banks in France or in other countries, in Spain, for instance. And we are just wondering about the end of pandemic emergency measures. What will happen at the end of moratorium on evictions, on arrears, etc. And if no prevention policies are taken, we will witness new cohorts of people that will ask for support to already overwhelmed accommodation systems. And we will see a rise in street homelessness and extreme forms of homelessness. This is basically what happened in the 80s in the United States. The explosion in the number of homeless young people at the time, along with a serious economic recession, created a cohort of long-term homeless people who are still sleeping today on the streets of North American cities. So here again, we have some recommendations. And first of all, we have, as Minister Mendes Godinho told us at the beginning of this event, we have an unprecedented European momentum to effectively fight housing exclusion and homelessness. We have this European platform for combating homelessness, which will be launched in June, as the Minister said earlier. It will be definitely an opportunity for ministers to sign a political declaration on the collective fight against homelessness. And tomorrow we'll start the Porto Social Summit. So we are asking for a true and real commitment to end homelessness by 2030 during the summit, and that would send a strong political signal as a mark of credibility of the European Union. Then we have EU tools as leverage for transforming the system and changing the paradigm. These EU tools are several. We have the Next Generation European Recovery Plan. We have EU cohesion funds. We have ESF and social funds. We have a structural reform support fund, etc. And we definitely have to use those to leverage the fact that we have to transform the way we deal with homelessness and try to have long-term and integrated strategies. We can also, as a second recommendation, learn from the pandemic and from the concrete gains that have been achieved for homeless people. We witnessed a lot of emergency measures taken by public authorities. And we definitely have to be clear about the fact that we have to impeach anyone to be back to the streets at the end of emergency measures. We also witnessed during the crisis, the pandemic, the fact that shelters, night shelters, for instance, had to be transformed into 24-hour services. And this is definitely something that has to stay. And we also saw that we had to decrease the number of beds in shelters to let people have more space for the sake of sanitary reasons. And this is something that we can build upon and basically just put the grounds for adequate accommodation standards in services. The third recommendation we make here is the fact that we have to broaden the European fight against homelessness across all sectors. Because housing is not an island, homelessness is the result of failures in various public policies that do not protect their target population from losing their homes. And European sectoral policies, whether related to anti-discrimination, health, migration, free movement, disability, etc., energy, must take into account homelessness reduction and the rights of homeless people. And fourth recommendation that we make here in the report is the fact that we have to improve the statistical follow-up and evaluation of public policies by looking to the expertise already acquired in European cities. The European platform for combating homelessness will definitely be an interesting tool in the idea of understanding better homelessness in different European contexts. We also propose to have a European Night of Solidarity that could be considered based on the model of census surveys of homeless people on a given night in cities. And there we can benefit from the experience of local level and European cities that have already carried out surveys like this. So these are the main recommendations that we make at European level. And I encourage you to also go in more detail in the report to have a clearer view of what we ask, because these are quite technical issues, but quite fundamental to understand how we can act together and collectively to reduce and end homelessness in Europe. You will also find at the end of the report a legal chapter on rent regulation that has been made by our colleague Maria Jose, and country sums in the report on different countries. But I will be quite quick on those one because we don't have enough time today. But don't hesitate also to look at those elements. And if you have any questions, we will be very happy to reply to them now. Thank you very much for being here with us. You can download the report on both websites, FEANTSA and Fondation Pierre. You can tweet or post about findings, questions. If you want to have debates, don't hesitate. You can use this hashtag Housing Exclusion 2021. And we are available for any discussion by email. Thank you very much. And I'm now giving the floor to Shell, who will moderate the question and answers. I didn't see if you have any questions, but I guess there are some. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you, Sarah, for this highlighting this massive report as it is. It's with conclusion and recommendation, and which also raise a lot of questions, of course, and we all hope that we can stop, like that this pandemic gonna raise a lot of homeless people now, and let's see what we can do together to really stop it. And now we're gonna have this question and answer time, but before I give the floor to Freek here, because Freek is going to help us with that. I just want to say that he's answering questions on the chat all the time. So if you put on answers, he gonna, it's not only this 10 minutes, it's gonna be the whole webinar. He can answer the questions also, Freek, because he's the guru answering man here. Okay, Freek, it's all yours.
Thank you, Shell, and good afternoon, everybody. There's not so many questions. There's some interesting comments, but there is a few questions. One is related to social housing. I think it was Sarah who said that an obvious part of the solution to homelessness is to have more social housing and easier access for homeless people to social housing. The question is, how can you oblige and encourage local authorities to produce more social housing, notably in France? I think the person asking the question person comes from France. There was another question about the suggestion to have a European night of solidarity to get, at least in the capital cities, to get some data about the most extreme form of homelessness. The question is whether there is any money foreseen at European level for that, and if not, if there is potential to make European money available. And then there was a comment on data collection, the importance of data collection, and the fact that in quite a number of countries, in Denmark in this case, data collection efforts didn't happen because of COVID last year, and was wondering if that is the case in other countries as well. So these are the three questions that I have been able to gather so far. Up to you to divide the answer.
Je vais peut-être prendre la question sur le logement social. Alors, évidemment, il y a des difficultés à pousser les villes à produire du logement social. En France, nous avons la chance d'avoir la loi SRU qui oblige les villes d'une certaine taille à produire au moins 25% de logement social sur leur territoire, ce qui, au regard de ce qui existe en Europe, est déjà une mesure très intéressante. Donc, peut-être une source d'inspiration pour d'autres pays européens.
Okay, I will try to answer the two others, but I'm asking for Freek also to complete, especially on the funds regarding the Night of Solidarity, because I think he will be better placed than me to answer. But on data collection regarding homelessness surveys during COVID, we had quite a lot of feedback from different European countries, for instance, Poland, or in local authorities in different countries where usual surveys that are carried on in a regular basis were not carried on during the COVID. And apparently in Poland, there were also quite political questions behind that. We have a little paragraph in the report about that, so I invite you to see the report. And regarding the funds for the Night of the Solidarity, I will leave the floor to Freek, if you agree.
Actually, the person came back to the question and said, well, it's not only about funds, but also about how that could work out practically. Yeah. But maybe quickly in terms of funding, I think the answer is difficult and easy at the same time. If the political will is there at European level and the European Commission to deal with homelessness, I'm sure that the funds can be made available to help cities organize a Night of Solidarity street count. But we're not there yet. The signs are promising that the political will is there, but it has to still materialize into concrete projects. So I'm hopeful, but there is no guarantee for the moment. But maybe on the practical side, I don't know, Sarah or Chloe, if you can say something like how could that happen practically?
Yeah, I think there were already quite a lot of exchanges and practices that had been put in place in different European countries between cities. And I think there are quite a lot of networks that could be used as leverage to help make this happen concretely. And yeah, I guess we would have to just count on those networks that are already existing and try to have collective thinking and sharing practices, because you have stuff happening, these kind of surveys are happening in Paris, in Barcelona, in Brussels, and quite a lot of expertise is already on the ground. So it would be more the idea of sharing and being collectively linked to see how it could be made a reality. Yeah, I don't know, Sarah, if you want to add anything.
Oui, d'ailleurs, il y a déjà des échanges qui ont eu lieu et qui ont permis d'améliorer la façon de faire et les pratiques, notamment en mettant en place des questionnaires pour essayer de comprendre qui étaient les personnes qui étaient rencontrées lors de ces nuits de la solidarité dans la rue. Et je crois d'ailleurs que, comme le disait Chloé, effectivement, il y a déjà des réseaux de villes qui existent. Je pense par exemple à Urbact ou à Eurocities, qui sont des lieux où les villes se rencontrent. Et c'est intéressant d'ailleurs de voir qu'elles sont vraiment proactives sur ces sujets parce qu'elles sont la première autorité politique à faire face à ces phénomènes, que ce soit le mal-logement ou que ce soit le nombre croissant des personnes sans abri. Et donc, elles cherchent des solutions. Et sur la question de l'encadrement des loyers, par exemple, on voit bien qu'elles sont moteurs. Elles sont aussi moteurs sur la question de l'encadrement des plateformes touristiques aussi. Donc, vraiment, le niveau des villes est très intéressant sur les sujets qui nous intéressent et peut être un vrai levier à la fois au niveau des États membres, mais aussi au sein de l'UE.
Maybe, Shell, very quickly, a last set of questions because we are short of time as usual, because now the questions are coming in instead of beforehand. There's a very practical question, a very specific question about data on young homeless people of migrant background. Do we have data on that? And can we say anything about trends? There is a question about the use of ERDF money. Can that be used for the fight against homelessness? Is there any examples? There is a large question about the need for rent regulation. Do we think that is required? And what do we think about the situation in Berlin? Is that something we support? And the last question that we take for today, and then the rest will answer by in writing, is if we know what the platform, this platform on homelessness that the minister, Anna Godinho, mentioned and that Chloe spoke about, what is this platform? Do we know anything more about it?
I can start with the question on migrants among migration and possibly a bit about the platform. And Sarah, if you want to take on the rent regulation and the RDF, but we can also complete. About youth and migrant youth, two elements very quickly. The next presentation we will have today will be by Marco and Catarina and will be about the situation in Trieste in Italy, and will be also quite interesting regarding young migrants. So I think we can also we will see data from Italy there. And we also did our report last year about people who are asylum seekers, and we see a very important number of young people who are asylum seekers in Europe and who face huge challenges accessing housing. And I invite you to read the previous report if you are interested in those topics. Regarding the platform, we don't know yet what exactly will happen. It will be launched 21st of June by the Portuguese presidency, as the minister said. We can only be hopeful that it will be the first time that Europe has such a tool. And we don't really know the shape of this tool, but we are closely working with different partners on that. So you will be kept informed for sure. And Sarah, I don't know if you want to take on the other questions on rent regulations and ERDF.
Alors, sur la réglementation des loyers, on l'a dit, hein, on pense que réellement, que ce soit la question du mal-logement en général ou la question de l'augmentation du nombre de personnes sans abri, il s'agit essentiellement et premièrement d'un problème de logement et l'augmentation des prix y est à sa part de responsabilité là-dedans. La décision, j'ai vu qu'il y avait une remarque sur la décision de la Cour constitutionnelle allemande qui a annulé le gel des loyers à Berlin. Évidemment, c'est une mauvaise nouvelle, je pense, pour tous les militants pour le droit au logement. Et on espère que les militants et les organisations de terrain en Allemagne continueront de batailler pour essayer de mettre en place cet encadrement. En France, ça a été également compliqué, mais que ce soit en France ou que ce soit à Berlin sur l'année pendant laquelle le gel a agi, on a vu des résultats, on a vu des loyers qui ont ou baissé ou en tout cas qui ont stagné et qui ont permis quand même d'éviter des flambées énormes et des difficultés croissantes pour les personnes qui habitent ces villes au marché très tendu. Donc ça, c'est sur l'encadrement, évidemment, dans le cadre notamment de Housing Rights Watch, on serait vraiment ravis d'engager un travail commun avec les autres organisations sur ces sujets et la porte est évidemment grande ouverte. Concernant les fonds européens, là, on a quand même des nouvelles qui sont plutôt intéressantes puisque, comme vous le savez, le budget de l'Union a été décidé pour l'exercice 2021-2027 et dans les textes, en tout cas, au moins en théorie, il y a la possibilité de développer des projets autour de la question du mal-logement, du développement de l'accompagnement des personnes mal logées et des personnes ou du développement de politiques ou de projets autour de la lutte contre le sans-abrisme. Donc, sur le plan du Fonds Solidarité européen, du FSE+, il y a la possibilité de faire financer de l'accompagnement, de faire financer de la coordination, de la formation des professionnels. C'est ce qui est prévu en France, en tout cas, avec la nouvelle programmation. Évidemment, chaque État va utiliser le FSE+, en fonction de ses priorités et il est nécessaire d'aller discuter avec les autorités de gestion. Et pour ce qui est du FEDER, le FEDER peut ouvrir la possibilité de développer des projets urbains, de développer du logement adapté et de faire en tout cas de l'investissement sur des infrastructures d'aide aux plus démunis. Voilà.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Chloe, again for this answering the questions here on the chat. And as I said, Freek will continue and try to answer if you send the questions there on the chat also. So let's proceed and continue here with the next feedback from Trieste. It's the youth housing exclusive and COVID-19. And it's going to be Marco Aliotta and Katarina Modig from Caritas Trieste. You're welcome. And as with Anna also, we can't hear the applause, but please continue. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon to all the audience, and thank you also for giving the opportunity to bring to this discussion our experience from the grassroots level. So I'll try to share the presentation and okay, that's it. So. Well, as you said, we are trying to focus on the situation in Trieste about the period of COVID-19 with a double focus. One is about youth homelessness, and the second is about young migrants coming from the Balkan routes. So this is where Trieste is. It's at northeast, at the top of our country, very close to Slovenia, and it's a medium-sized city, and also reading and listening to the presentation and about some facts of Italy, and in some way the sociological dynamics of this city are closer than the Central and Northern Europe than Italy. For example, it's not like in the other part of Italy that's like 95% of young people lives with parents, because people are used to live outside the family very soon when they become 18 years old. Or another example related to housing exclusion is that there are less house owners, because Italy is very well known to have people who owns their own house. In Trieste, this is less present. We have like 10% of migrants in our city, and it's more than the average of Italy. And but at the same time, this is a city of elderly people. Only 6% of people are between 18 and 24 years old. And between 2012 and 2014, we made the first official public survey on homelessness in Italy, together with Caritas, FEOPS, that is a FEANTSA member, and ISTAT. And there was an evidence of more than 500 homeless. We are talking about not only rough sleeping homeless, but also people living in inadequate houses, and all the categories that we can find in ethos. And talking about the housing situation, Trieste is becoming more and more a touristic city. And as we well know from other cities like, I don't know, Barcelona, I heard, the rent are increasing, especially in the city center. 34% of our clients live in private rented houses, and this is a problem for the increasing of the rents. But at the same time, we have like 30,000 houses empty in the city. And talking about energy poverty, we are having a lot of clients asking for support to pay utilities. And there is also a lot of difficulties to access social housing. For example, in the last year, there was like 8,000 applications for social housing, but 1 to 16 answers per year. And when it comes to young people, there was an increase of young clients in Caritas services. On the other hand, the second focus is on the Balkan route. The Balkan route became in the last few years the main way to enter Europe and to enter Italy, to pass through Italy to go somewhere else. It's not anymore the Mediterranean route, and because we are at the end of the Balkan route, there was a very huge impact on the presence of migrants coming from these routes. And this is an issue that we are facing, and especially during the pandemic. And now I give the floor to Caterina, that is, as I said, the head of accommodation unit, to explain the two systems: one to support homeless people, and the other to support migrants coming from the Balkan route. Caterina, switch on the mic. The microphone. Microfono.
Because I was blocked from outside before, sorry. Here in Trieste we have, I would say, quite a good system of reception for homeless people, thanks to the pandemic, because the Trieste municipality has increased the numbers of the places available for homeless people during all this COVID period, due to the law that forbade to leave the people in the streets during the lockdown periods. Okay, so we have now the first step is the isolation, because in all the shelters were often periods where 10, 15, 20 people altogether got sick from COVID, and it was a risk for everybody's health. So they opened these centers where the people are 10 days in isolation. They are checked for the COVID virus, and if they are negative after 10 days, they can be sent to the shelters. We from Caritas, like about more than 100 places for homeless people, and it's a lot for a small city like Trieste. It's both in shelters for more problematic people with addictions or psychiatric problems. Then we have centers for families. There are more like co-housing projects, and some centers where we accommodate more young people. Because in this, in all this period, we have seen quite a lot requests from young people that's 18 or up to 25. They needed accommodation. It became more evident in this last period of the COVID pandemic period. And we had the last year also the project of Housing First, where we accommodate, it was, I would say, more young people than the classical homeless over 50 or between 40, 50 years. That is usually the target for this project. And if we have time, then later my colleague Gianpaolo will tell some stories of these people that we accommodated in the Housing First project, who are between 18 and 20 and 25. So the other group of centers are especially for migrants. And that means not more exactly to asylum seekers, not general migrants, because the permanent resident migrants have access to all the centers and the services of the municipality, like Italian citizens. There is no difference. When we talk about migrants, in this case, are asylum seekers. So as Marco explained before, we are on the Balkan route. And there are quite a large number of people coming every day through Slovenian border. And in during this pandemic period, also the Italian government provided for centers where these people are isolated and tested for coronavirus before they have access to the normal centers for asylum seekers. In Trieste, we have like about 1,000 places in our centers and in the centers of another association for asylum seekers, where they can stay until all the procedure before they are in audition for in the commission, and before they get the results and the definitive documents. Then after they get the result, they have access then to also other projects for support in housing and integration. Usually are like projects that they get a flat from the government or with other association. So that's the normal route. All these periods, there are many migrants or asylum seekers who become homeless, and later on I will explain maybe the reasons why it comes up to this.
Okay, sorry. And then I give some facts, some data about homeless people and migrants. So these are the numbers of 2020 about as we call the fiduciary isolation of homeless people in 2020. We had like 92 people hosted in these centers, and 25% were young people. Talking about the reception centers from the municipality, we hosted more than 200 people, and 33% were people from 18 to 35. When it comes to housing first, we had the opportunity to host 20 people in 10 apartments using ESF funds with an Italian and national strategy to tackle homelessness, and 37% were young people. Okay, sorry. Regarding migrants in our area, in the area of Trieste in 2020, we had more than 4,000 arrivals, and of which at about 800 were unaccompanied minors. And we host more than half of these migrants arriving in our territory. And while in the emergency center for asylum seekers, as Caterina explained, we had 31% of people of asylum seeker of 18 and 45 years old, and then 39% of young adults from 26 to 35 years old. And then I give the floor to my colleagues just to give some profiles and needs that we detected.
Marco, I can see the, okay. One of the main problems we have seen in this last year of young adults who became homeless are those who were formerly unaccompanied minors, because in Italy all those people who arrived through Balkan route, for example, until 18 years, they have automatically a place in a center, in a care facility, but on the day they are 18, they must go out, and so they become homeless. Doesn't matter what, they must go out. And we have received a huge amount of requests to take these young manly boys, because they are almost all are boys, and they come mostly from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or the Maghreb countries, or some from them from Egypt, but many are from Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. And so it's now difficult to find a solution for them, because sometimes they decide then to request asylum, and so they have the chance to enter the centers for asylum seekers, and it guarantees like a huge period that they can stay in the center, because until you don't get the result from the commission or a status, then you have the accommodation and you have the access also to schools, to courses of Italian, or to other professionalizing courses. The problem is for those who don't enter this category, those who cannot or decide not to ask for asylum, because then the time to bring them to an autonomy is very, very short, because the Italian law doesn't give you the possibility to have the permit of stay for a long period. It can be 6 months up to 1 year. Until then, you can apply for a permit of stay for because you have a job, or you can support yourself. So usually these guys arrive at 17 and a half. So in 6 months they cannot be on the way to autonomy. Then the other part of the young adults who become homeless are those who were in the asylum, in the centers for asylum seekers, but then for other reasons they leave and they try their fortune around. They say, I will try to find a job in another city or anything. Then they lose the job, they don't have any place to go, they come back. But the Italian government, once you leave by your own will the center, you cannot have the place back. And these people become homeless. Usually they are young. They are from 18 to 25, maybe maximum 30. The other category of young people that are at risk for the homelessness are all those who have low education. They don't go over the mandatory school period. That means they stop study at 16, they don't have no profession, they don't know anything what they do, and so they find only very, very precarious jobs. It means that they work 2 months, then 3 months they don't work, and then again. Many of the young people we had in our centers were with psychiatric pathologies and problems with addictions. And that's another area that should be a long time to talk. Also, we had in our centers and in our Housing First project young families who before lived in completely inadequate accommodation, usually with other members of their family, with the parents, grandparents, and many of them had also problems of disability. One in particular were a very interesting case because they were a Roma family, so homeless from beginning, and we accommodate them in one of the apartments of Housing First.
Okay, so please give us an advice. We have like 1 or 2 minutes to give the floor to my colleague Gianpaolo, just to tell a story about one of our clients. Is it okay?
We are a bit
late.
Late, yes.
Okay.
So maybe we could. Well, if it's fast, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. If it's fast, it would be good to have.
Of course.
Yeah. And thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Gianpaolo, 1 minute to you.
Well, I think it's a bit difficult to sum up everything in 1 minute. So I don't know if it's better maybe to see if there are more questions, or because for me it's really difficult to synthesize in 1 minute.
Okay. Maybe we are available if there are some questions.
Yeah, let's follow the question and answers, and you can answer live also there in the chat. So thank you very much, Marco and Katarina. Let's move on also here. As we heard Anna Godinho talking about the platform work, we are now going to listen to Yves Leterme, who is the former Prime Minister of Belgium. And proceed, Yves. I think it's better if you take the floor right ahead.
Thank you very much, Chell, and good afternoon to all of you. I hope you hear me.
We can hear you, but we can't see you, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we see you now. Great.
Maybe the first was more interesting than the second, but anyway, it's better to see each other. First of all, thank you for having me here in this, I would say, very interesting afternoon. I would like to, of course, start by commending the authors and all the people that cooperated in producing this excellent report. So I commend FEANTSA, Fondation Abbé Pierre, and the authors for excellent work, again, achieved in what I would say is defending the defenseless. I think it's another token of the good and useful work FEANTSA and the Fondation do. Based on a little bit of experience, I think a problem is only taken care of when it is visible, and if you can make it more visible and in all details and in all specifics, you have more chance to attract attention of the general public, but what is maybe more important at this stage also from policymakers. At least there is no alibi anymore for policymakers not to act to improve situations. So congratulations for the good work. It is very important. The findings, I think, are also timely, and they tend to illustrate what we intuitively already feel when we are witnessing what's happening in the societies, and that is that more specifically younger generations, notwithstanding problems for all citizens in this period of time, but that more specifically younger generations suffer a lot from the impact of COVID-19 and from what I would call the failures of our social welfare states. And I think there are some good recommendations, and I would say one amongst the others is to try to consolidate what has been put in place now as an emergency aid to homeless people because of sanitary reasons and because just, well, policymakers wanted to do that supplementary effort, but try to consolidate it and try to make it last longer than the period of the pandemic, I think is an excellent recommendation. The situation of pandemic has shown that when there is a real urgent need, when there is a case of emergency, societies can deliver and can, let's say, put in place some emergency measures. So let's try now to defend the case that this should be consolidated, so rendered more structural. Ladies and gentlemen, FEANTSA is for me personally, and apologies for not having presented myself to you more extensively, but FEANTSA is for me one of the two stakeholders that brought me closer to the societal challenge of homelessness. As an elected politician, I was, of course, now and then confronted with statistics and with policy notes, rarely confronted actually with policy documents mentioning the challenge. But when I was resuming a more, let's say, average lifestyle, some 7 to 8 years ago, I really witnessed how the problem of homelessness in the cities where I happened to live over the last 7, 8 years in Ostend or in Stockholm or in Paris is really increasing and is taking a volume and size which is, I think, even less than before acceptable. Wanting to try to do something else than just to drop €1 now and then in a small basket in front of poor people or of homeless people, I met Freek and I met some people from FEANTSA. And another step that was taken was when I very recently met Commissioner Schmidt, who entrusted me with the role to volunteer as a kind of goodwill ambassador for the cause of the platform that will be launched later this year, well, more precisely the 21st of June, as has been said by Minister Mendes Godinho. So my role will be to try to help a hand all the people that are involved, the excellent work that already has been done, try to motivate stakeholders and potential partners. Of course, you don't have to be motivated. Here I preach for the convinced, but I'm sure that out of this virtual room, there are lots of very interesting potential partners that could be convinced to be involved in that platform or directly or indirectly do give more help and aid and influence positively the policy case of trying to combat more efficiently and prevent homelessness. Today, I'm not entitled to promise you more and to give you more details than just to underline that I will do what I can to help to make the platform take a good start. I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's good to put the platform in a little bit of a broader framework and to set the scenery of where we are with European integration. I think it's fair to say that, and I think most of you will agree, that European integration is as such one of the most positive developments in the recent history of mankind. And I think that besides bringing lasting peace and elimination of borders, installing free movement and so on, the European integration also allowed, through the concept of the internal market, to put in place and to keep up our typically European social market economy, which is really typically European, with safety nets like compulsory health insurance and other branches of social security, with good quality collective service. And all this functioned since some decades ago as a real elevator out of poverty for, let's say, broad masses of the European population. By the way, I think that the social market economy has also helped us in the past to weather the most difficult social and economic challenges. The pursued inclusiveness of the concept of the social market economy, however, and I think we should be frank and open, has suffered recently from rising inequalities, from job destruction because of an open globalized race to the bottom of labor costs, because of competitiveness enhancing budgetary cuts, etc. And so I think that today it is very clear that one of the priorities should be to re-strengthen, so to say, the European social market economy as the watermark, and as part of what brings us together beyond the central EU focus on its citizens as consumers. And we have the tools for that. There is Article 3 in the treaty, there is the Pillar of Social Rights, there is recently the Action Plan, and these are all anchors for strengthening the underdeveloped social dimension of the Union. And I think that, as the minister has said, that the summit tomorrow in Porto and Saturday will surely include another series of engagements and bold steps in the right direction. And Gothenburg was already a very important moment before. But equally important, besides building up this social pillar, this pillar of social rights, and implement Article 3 of the treaty, I think equally important, and it's a little bit underdeveloped, I think, until now, is to look very close at the so-called leftovers, at the issue of social inclusion remaining, notwithstanding all these policies at all levels, and notwithstanding all the efforts. And homeless women and men, homeless children, older people, they are surely suffering from what is rightly called the most extreme exclusion of that you can imagine, because being homeless is not only, let's say, a fact of materiality. It, of course, also is an offense, and it's a lack of dignity in the interaction amongst human beings. Since you devote the best of your talents to try to improve their condition, I don't have to elaborate on that. You know better than I how the situation is and what could be improved. But a crucial point is, I think, that given the situation as is described in the report, the EU, alongside the local, regional, and national levels of governance, this is a sensitive point in European politics, subsidiarity, but that the EU, alongside the other levels of governance, really has a legal, that is the treaty, and also a moral duty, which is even more important, to act. And we are there now, I think, to push the European Union to really act. Indeed, it has the obligation to implement Article 3 of the treaty, but it should do that in the most efficient way. And that is, I think, by using more structural solutions and also attack more effectively the root causes of homelessness, as has been again phrased and explained in the sixth report. But I think there is a positive development also. There's a positive point in all this darkness. I think indeed that there is now the case that there is I think that there is a quite broad consensus amongst all crucial partners in the, usually very complex EU decision-making process. There is a consensus that it is now time for a real breakthrough. I think the European Parliament in its new legislature has done excellent work by producing some good recommendations and reports that have been voted by very vast majorities of the Parliament. The Commissioner in charge, Nicolas Schmit, for having spoken to him, he's really convinced that he can be a change maker in that domain, and he's been vocal on behalf of the European Commission about concrete steps he wants to take and has taken up his responsibilities in this file until now. And last but not least, I think that the Portuguese rotating president of EBSCO has managed to bring the homelessness together with her colleagues on the list of priorities in the scope of the pillar of social rights and the action plan. So I think this conjunction and converging developments happen at a moment that is crucial. It's also a moment, by the way, where the European Union, to relaunch its economy, has to increase investments, has to bring supplementary means to the table to relaunch crucial sectors of the economy. And I already mentioned the pandemia also with some recommendations linked to that in the report. So I'm very prudent. I have a very prudent nature, but nevertheless, I would say that these developments and the stage where we are all together are building up, or a kind of building up of a momentum with potentially, I think, a breakthrough for a real European Union approach and policy investment that we haven't seen until now. And I think we all together have to seize that window of opportunity now in the coming months, whatever it takes, I would say. We all know that competence and responsibility for preventing and combating homelessness is at the first place local, regional, national. I've said that already. And this should be respected. It is indeed our mayors and aldermen, it's the regional and local administrations, it's the civil society at the grassroots level, I would say. It's the national authorities that have the competence, but also know best how in the real situation of each of their countries and their municipalities, how in their streets of their communities, how this challenge can best be answered. But I think this cannot serve anymore as an alibi not to act at the European level, including bottom-up under the impulse of member states. I think the European Union has to do better to help preventing and combating homelessness, better than it did until now. The European Union has to support more strongly the private and public stakeholders. This means also, I think, potentially financially. It has to improve access to EU funds to invest money. It has to include also the specific challenges of homelessness in all relevant policies to mainstream homelessness or to mainstream the policies taking into account the homelessness. It has to offer also what it is best at, a platform of commonly designed platform and owned by all stakeholders, a platform for mutual learning, for peer review and monitoring, for making the homelessness more visible, for better informed, coordinated, and concerted action. I think that in a nutshell is, by the way, what the platform should be about, certainly in the first months when it has started. The Social Summit in Porto tomorrow, I said it already, has included combating homelessness as an important policy goal. Commissioner Schmidt and DG Empel are about to scale up their initiatives. Next month, we will see at the conference in Lisbon, I think, a good launch of the platform that could be the engine for real active involvement of the Union in this domain. But I would say, based on my little experience, that there is one missing point in this enumeration of the social summits, the Council, the Commission, the European Parliament, and so on. It is the mere fact that when it comes to effectiveness and impactfulness of policies, treaties, institutions, rules, money is important and it's crucial, but it's the people that make the difference. And more precisely, those people that are directly experienced, that know, they have a good view on the problem, and that have the capacity to, let's say, to transfer all the goodwill and all the resources possible to the ground, to the neighborhood of the people that need it and deserve it. And I think this meeting, you all gathered here, are a very important part of these people that will make the difference. So I hope to meet you frequently. I hope that next month we can have a good launch of that platform, but the platform only functions when you take up the role you have, and this is central, this is crucial. It will depend also on you whether this can make a difference in the daily lives of people that are defenseless today and that deserve more attention. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much yourself, Mr. Laterme. This was very good news on the information you could give us up till today. I know that maybe you wanted to say something more or promising things also. It's always nice to have, a more, something more. You always want something more to hear that things are going to happen. But we're looking forward to this European platform and the launch of that. So we'll be seeing maybe each other then at the time. So thank you. And let's move on to the last speaker here, which is Manuel, I hope I say it right, Domerch, who is the director of the research in Fondation Pierre, and he's going to make the conclusions for this webinar. So thank you, and I give the floor to you, Manuel.
Merci beaucoup, merci à toutes et à tous. Je vais essayer de conclure en quelques minutes après la présentation de ce 6e éclairage, avec une pensée pour le premier éclairage qu'on a présenté en 2015, où je crois que nous étions entre 32 et 34 personnes dans une salle d'une arrière-boutique bruxelloise, et aujourd'hui nous sommes plus de 300. Donc un grand bravo en particulier à Sarah et à Chloé pour avoir repris le flambeau depuis tant d'années et faire de ce moment un moment de vérité pour tout le monde, parce que c'est aussi relayé dans la presse, auprès des pouvoirs publics, un moment de vérité sur l'implication des Européens, à la fois l'Union européenne, la Commission, les États, la société civile, face à la question du mal-logement et du sans-abrisme. Ce moment de vérité, je crois qu'aujourd'hui, pour ce 6e éclairage, il est encore plus important que les années précédentes, parce que nous arrivons à une forme de momentum, ça a été dit par beaucoup de personnes, pour beaucoup de raisons qui font que cet éclairage et ce moment actuel n'est pas similaire aux 5 précédents. Pourquoi je dis ça? Parce que nous avons évidemment cette crise Covid qui rebat toutes les cartes, pour le pire ou peut-être pour le meilleur, espérons que ce soit pour le meilleur, avec un contexte qui était impensable il y a encore 1 an et demi, où les dépenses publiques sont désormais davantage ouvertes que par le passé, où la règle des 3% de déficit budgétaire est totalement envolée, oubliée, en tout cas pour le moment. Espérons qu'elle reste oubliée pendant encore quelques temps, avec des taux d'intérêt parfois même négatifs, qui font que les États et l'Union européenne qui souhaiteraient agir vraiment contre le sans-abrisme et contre le mal-logement ont aujourd'hui les moyens de le faire. Donc c'est très important de ne pas rater ce coche-là parce que c'est la sorte d'occasion qui ne se représente pas deux fois dans une même décennie. C'est également un momentum politique, ça a été dit, avec la présidence portugaise, avec le sommet social, avec la plateforme sur le sans-abrisme dans les semaines qui viennent au Portugal, et on peut remercier la ministre du Travail portugaise de sa participation aujourd'hui. C'est un signe quand même très important de volontarisme pour nous, évidemment à condition que des politiques sortent de ces rendez-vous, mais on voit qu'il y a un frémissement, un intérêt pour cela. La présidence française, ensuite, à partir de juillet 2021, est une occasion pour faire plus, faire mieux, pour continuer. En tout cas, c'est l'intention affichée de la part du ministère des Affaires européennes français que nous avons rencontré il y a quelques semaines. Et puis bientôt aussi, un nouveau ou une nouvelle chancelière allemande. On voit qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui vont changer et que s'il y a une volonté politique, sans doute qu'on aura les moyens d'avancer sur ce sujet. De l'autre côté de l'Atlantique, nous avons aussi l'exemple de Joe Biden, quand même, qui montre que même dans un pays où cette question semblait négligée depuis des années, avec une situation assez catastrophique, on est capable aujourd'hui de mettre sur la table des milliards, voire des centaines de milliards de dollars, en l'occurrence, pour lutter contre le mal-logement, 200 milliards de dollars contre le mal-logement et 5 milliards pour les sans-abri débloqués par le plan de Joe Biden. Là aussi, ça change la donne, ça change la perspective des Européens qui, on le sait bien, regardent aussi ce qui se passe de l'autre côté. Momentum également européen avec le Brexit, et donc c'est plutôt une mauvaise nouvelle, mais aussi la fin d'une sorte de veto permanent ou de menace de veto permanent de la part de nos voisins britanniques. Et donc, le moment peut-être d'agir avec le début de la période budgétaire 2021-2027, les fonds structurels européens qui peuvent être déployés pour lutter contre le mal-logement. Et donc, on a un moment de bascule aujourd'hui, et là, dans les mois qui viennent, si tous ensemble, si la société civile, les mouvements sociaux arrivent à peser aussi, à faire entendre la voix des personnes mal logées sans abri, on peut obtenir des victoires. Moment de bascule sur le front, par exemple, des expulsions locatives. En France, c'est très prégnant là, ces prochaines semaines, puisqu'à partir du 1er juin, nous avons 30 000 ménages qui sont en sursis et qui peuvent être expulsés à partir du 1er juin. C'est le cas dans beaucoup d'autres pays qui ont fait un vrai effort pour limiter les expulsions locatives depuis le début de la crise Covid. Mais maintenant, est-ce que les efforts vont se relâcher? Est-ce que toute cette énergie qui a été mise pour limiter la casse va être terminée? Et donc, est-ce que cette crise Covid va se traduire par une explosion des expulsions locatives? On peut dire la même chose sur l'effort qui a été fait pour trouver des places d'hébergement en très grand nombre pour des personnes qui étaient à la rue au moment de cette crise Covid. Là aussi, on est à un carrefour. Est-ce qu'on ferme ces places et qu'on renvoie les personnes à la rue, chez des marchands de sommeil ou dans des squats? Ou est-ce qu'on profite d'avoir les personnes disponibles, d'avoir des moyens financiers disponibles pour les orienter vers le logement d'abord? Donc là aussi, on a un choix à faire, sachant que le statu quo ne peut pas être un choix acceptable. Je renvoie au rapport de 2019 Fondation de Pierre, FEANTSA sur les conditions d'hébergement d'urgence en Europe, qui sont la plupart du temps extrêmement néfastes pour les personnes, pour les familles, pour leur capacité à se projeter dans l'avenir, et également extrêmement néfastes pour les dépenses publiques. Donc là, on ne peut pas se contenter de ce statu quo avec des centaines de milliers de personnes en Europe qui vivent ou survivent dans des hébergements d'urgence de mauvaise qualité. C'est donc un moment de bascule parce que, ça a été dit, nous avons cette possibilité peut-être que l'Europe s'empare de la question du sans-abrisme. Évidemment, ce n'est pas une compétence européenne, la question du logement, c'est plutôt une compétence nationale, mais l'Union européenne peut agir. Et donc cette plateforme contre le sans-abrisme peut être un moment justement pour lancer l'action, à condition d'avoir des objectifs de réduction chiffrés, pays par pays, du nombre de personnes sans abri, à condition d'avoir des méthodes de décompte du nombre de personnes sans abri. Donc Eurostat a un rôle à jouer là-dedans. L'harmonisation de ce qu'on appelle parfois les nuits de la solidarité, les décomptes, une nuit donnée du nombre de personnes sans abri peuvent être harmonisés dans tous les pays d'Europe, dans les grandes capitales européennes ou dans les grandes villes, pour avoir une évolution et pour que la carte du nombre de personnes sans domicile qu'on a créée dans le cadre de ce rapport il y a 4 ou 5 ans, puisse être une carte qui ne serait pas simplement une compilation de données incomparables entre elles, parfois extrêmement fragiles, mais une carte qui montrerait le tableau de bord réel, fiable, comparable du nombre de personnes qui sont sans abri pour aller vers une diminution. Donc là, même si l'Union européenne n'a pas une compétence stricte sur cette question, elle a un soft power très important. Elle peut lancer le mouvement. Elle peut créer des expérimentations à l'échelle européenne très ambitieuses, non pas sur des centaines, mais sur des milliers, des dizaines de milliers de personnes qui pourraient bénéficier d'un programme Logement d'abord, qui serait financé par l'Union européenne avec des fonds européens. Ce serait une avancée très forte pour les pays qui n'ont pas commencé à faire cette transition vers le logement d'abord. D'autres pays l'ont fait très bien comme la Finlande. Certains sont en voie de le faire ou essayent de le faire à leur manière avec beaucoup de carences, mais avec une volonté. Je pense notamment évidemment à la France. Donc on pourrait avancer avec des données, une volonté, avec des expérimentations, avec des formations croisées aussi entre les travailleurs sociaux, les élus locaux des différents pays pour aller voir comment ça marche chez les voisins, en officialisant une déclaration des droits des personnes sans abri pour montrer que les personnes à la rue, en hébergement d'urgence, ne sont pas des criminels et ne peuvent pas être envoyés en prison, stigmatisés, comme c'est le cas dans beaucoup de pays comme en Hongrie, mais aussi en Angleterre, en France et dans bien d'autres pays, hélas. Donc là, on voit qu'il y a beaucoup de choses à faire, à condition de le vouloir et de financer aussi cette plateforme, l'animer, la structurer, la pérenniser, pour que ce ne soit pas simplement un one-shot pour donner le change pendant un sommet social. Donc ça, on a beaucoup d'espoir là-dessus. Un moment de bascule également avec cette crise sur la question de l'encadrement des marchés, l'intervention publique sur les marchés de l'immobilier qui est absolument nécessaire. On le voit pour un exemple assez symbolique sur Airbnb qui a en grande partie déstructuré les équilibres précaires dans les grandes métropoles, les villes touristiques en Europe. Airbnb est à terre, tout comme le tourisme dans ces grandes métropoles en ce moment. Il faut profiter de ce moment pour mieux réguler, encadrer les plateformes touristiques comme Airbnb pour éviter de faire passer les touristes devant les habitants, notamment les habitants modestes et précaires de ces grandes capitales. Donc là aussi, la Commission européenne a son rôle à jouer et évidemment les grandes villes et les États membres également. De la même manière, l'encadrement des loyers, ça a été évoqué, la question des jeunes et des jeunes pauvres sur le marché du logement en Europe aboutit à créer une forme de génération loyer qui subit les loyers abusifs dans les grandes villes et qui subit une situation extrêmement différente du reste de la population qui en grande majorité est propriétaire de son logement ou dans des zones détendues. Et donc, on voit qu'une des causes principales de cette fracture générationnelle qui est encore accentuée par la crise sanitaire, c'est le niveau délirant des loyers dans des villes comme Londres, Paris, Berlin, Barcelone, etc. Donc, c'est le moment d'avoir un mouvement d'encadrement des loyers encouragé par l'Union européenne au lieu d'être freiné par l'idéologie du libre marché. Donc là, on voit bien que les choses sont en train de changer, en tout cas on peut l'espérer, et que des mouvements qui sont aussi poussés par des mouvements de locataires, des mouvements sociaux, peuvent aboutir à des expériences intéressantes. Et puis, plus globalement, c'est le moment d'investir de l'argent public dans le logement. Et ça, tous les rapports nous le montrent depuis une dizaine d'années. Le montant des aides publiques au logement en Europe est en diminution, en particulier en ce qui concerne le montant des aides à la construction et à la rénovation de logement. Donc ça, c'est vraiment très dommageable parce que ça laisse le marché livré à lui-même avec des conséquences néfastes pour les plus pauvres, pour l'environnement. Et donc, ces montants qui sont assez minimes, on parle de 80 milliards d'euros, tout compris d'aide publique au logement, c'est-à-dire à peu près 150 € par habitant et par an. C'est pas suffisant pour mener des politiques à la hauteur, et ce montant est en baisse d'à peu près un tiers depuis 10 ans. Donc, c'est le moment d'inverser la tendance. Nous avons des outils à disposition pour des plans de relance ambitieux. Attention à ce que ces plans de relance n'oublient pas le logement, et que s'il y a des investissements publics pour faire du logement, ce soit bien ciblé, en particulier sur du logement social, c'est-à-dire avec des loyers modérés, attribués à des ménages qui en ont besoin en particulier, mais pas simplement, mais en particulier aux personnes qui viennent de la rue ou qui sont en hébergement. Ça peut être très important, et il faut faire attention à ne pas dépenser cet argent n'importe comment, parce qu'il y a tellement d'argent de création monétaire qui est dispensé de manière assez aveugle, que ça peut aussi alimenter ou réalimenter des bulles immobilières au détriment des plus pauvres sur les marchés immobiliers. Et donc, tout l'enjeu aujourd'hui de ce momentum dont on parle, c'est de ne pas refaire les erreurs de la crise précédente, 2008, avec une relance beaucoup trop tardive, avec une crise de la dette et avec des dépenses publiques ou des créations monétaires qui n'ont pas été bien ciblées et qui sont venues alimenter la hausse des prix. Quand on parle de la crise de 2008, ça a été bien rappelé pendant la présentation, certains pays et surtout certains ménages dans ces pays souffrent encore fortement de cette crise de 2008, 2010, 2011, en particulier des pays qui ont été laminés par cette crise. Évidemment, on pense à la Grèce, et quand on voit l'évolution de l'index du mal-logement dans le rapport année après année, ce qu'on voit, ce qui saute aux yeux, sur un domaine où les pourcentages, les tendances évoluent assez lentement, le domaine du logement, c'est un pays comme la Grèce qui a été ravagé avec vraiment un décrochage exponentiel en termes de mal-logement par rapport au reste du continent. Donc là, l'occasion d'investir à nouveau dans le logement doit être aussi l'occasion de rattraper les erreurs, les échecs qui ont été commis depuis une dizaine d'années. Évidemment, c'est un momentum en termes de transition énergétique, ça je pense que tout le monde est d'accord là-dessus, et le logement doit avoir sa part aussi dans cette histoire-là, pour le climat, pour l'emploi, pour la santé, pour l'indépendance énergétique de l'Europe. Là aussi, c'est un enjeu, au-delà de l'enjeu social ou écologique, c'est un enjeu même géopolitique, avoir cette vague de rénovation qui soit réellement performante, qui soit bien financée publiquement et qui surtout profite aux ménages qui sont en précarité énergétique, aux ménages les plus modestes, puisque aujourd'hui, souvent, ils se ruinent pour se chauffer. Il ne faudrait pas qu'ils se ruinent pour rénover leur logement ou le logement de leurs propriétaires. Et donc, il faut que cette impulsion écologique soit couplée à une impulsion sociale. Voilà. Donc, pour terminer, on a quand même des motifs d'espoir. On voit que nos mains tendues, nos appels au secours à la FEANTSA, à la Fondation Pierre et tous les acteurs avec qui on agit régulièrement sont de plus en plus entendus. Au Parlement européen, une délibération qui a été assez ambitieuse pour éradiquer le sans-abrisme en 2030, le commissaire Nicolas Schmit, l'ex-Premier ministre Yves Le Terme, belge, qui était parmi nous et que je remercie encore une fois. On voit qu'il y a des choses qui peuvent changer, mais on a quelques mois devant nous et les décideurs ont quelques mois devant eux pour ne pas décevoir ces ambitions extrêmement importantes. Donc voilà, je voudrais remercier toutes les personnes qui ont participé ou qui ont assisté à ce 6e éclairage, et puis je vous invite évidemment à le lire en ligne dès que vous pouvez.
Merci Manuel. Thanks to everyone. Let's meet next year and have a very nice end of the day. Thanks Shell, thanks Yves, Manuel, Katarina, Marco, Sarah, and all the speakers. And see you soon. Take care.
Merci à tous, à l'année prochaine.
Merci. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.